بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Welcome back everyone to lecture 4 in the discussion on inheritance. So what I'm going to do in this class is we're going to begin with the 1/6 discussion. Actually, I'm going to begin with with an overview of the fraction section that we just did because I felt like we did it kind of quick, which it is kind of quick because it's just one of those things where you go through it and you got to go through it several times until it sticks. But I do want to just go over the 1/6 part one more time. It's almost just going to be a repeat because the 1/6 share are the shares that we find when somebody blocks somebody else, partially or fully or something like that. Okay, and then the next section after that is the section of omissions. Who is omitted by the presence of somebody? So this is a complete blocking. So in the fractions, we have partial blocking. In the omissions, we have the complete blocking, the complete hijab, that somebody's presence blocks somebody else's presence. Including in that is going to be the famous issue of brothers and sisters, so that's a separate section in the section of omissions. And then we turn a corner sort of towards the end, the final section of this chapter, which is to talk about the wasiyah, a testamentary bequest, or a bequest as I just usually translate it. And this is, in the Hashia, it's quite a lengthy section. It's almost like 25 pages. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to do half of that today, and then in tomorrow's lecture, we'll do the other half, and then conclude the section in the book before we move on to the Rahibayya. So in the Wasiyah, we're going to begin the way we normally begin a new topic, which is to do some introductory remarks, talking about some of the adillah, talking about the ruling of the wasiyah, how it's a confirmed sunnah, and there's ijma' about that. And then we are going to talk about things like giving the wasiyah, or giving away your wealth as a bequest while you are healthy, while you are sick, while you're on the sickness of death, how things might be valued, if there might be a fluctuation of pricing, because we know that you're only allowed to give 1/3 of your total net worth. So therefore, we need to have a mechanism of how things are going to be valued so that we can value if what I have given has exceeded the 1/3 or not. So those are the main topics we'll talk about in today's lecture, and we'll begin as we do in the next clip, inshallah. All right, so we begin the way we normally begin, which is to turn directly to the text of Qadi Abu Shuja' radiallahu anhu in the original Arabic. قال المصنف رحمه الله ونفعنا بعلومه في الدارين آمين. والسدس فرض 7 الأم مع الولد أو ولد الابن أو 2 فصاعدا من الإخوة والأخوات، وهو للجدة عند عدم الأم، ولبنت الابن مع بنت الصلب، وهو للأخت مع الأب مع الأخت مع الأب والأم، وهو فرض الأب مع الولد أو ولد الابن، وفرض الجد عند عدم الأب، وهو فرض الواحد من ولد الأم. وتسقط الجدات بالأم والأجداد بالأب، ويسقط الولد الأم مع 4 الولد وولد الابن والابن والجد، ويسقط الأخ للأب والأم مع 3 الابن وابن الابن والأب، ويسقط ولد الأب بهؤلاء 3 وبالأخ للأب والأم. و4 يعصبون أخواتهم الابن وابن الابن والأخ من الأب والأم والأخ من الأب. و4 يرثون دون إخواتهم وهم الأعمام وبنو الأعمام وبنو الأخ وعصبات المولى المعتق. فصل في الوصية. وتجوز الوصية بالمعلوم والمجهول وبالموجود والمعدوم، وهي من الثلث. Okay, so that sounds like, sorry, I have to bend and get my bookmark. Apologize. Okay. Let's read the translation of that. So he says, Qadi Abu Shuja' radiallahu anhu says, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him. May we benefit from his knowledge in this world and in the next, inshallah. 1/6 is the obligatory share for 7. The mother, if an immediate descendant, a son's descendant, or two more siblings are present. This is from the text of the Quran. Number two, the paternal grandmother, provided the mother is not present. Number three, the son's daughter, provided an immediate daughter is present. Number four, the consanguine sister, provided the full sister is present. Number five, the father, provided an immediate descendant or son's descendant is present. Six, the paternal grandfather, if the father is present. And seven, the mother's child, if the child has no siblings. Omissions. The mother's the mother's presence causes the grandmother to be omitted. The father's presence causes the grandfather to be omitted. The mother's child is omitted in the presence of one of four: a son, a son's son, the father, or the paternal grandfather, because all of those would be closer to the deceased than the mother's son, yani from another father. The full brother is omitted in the presence of one of the three: a son, a son's son, or a father. The father's son is omitted by those three and by the presence of a full brother. Brothers and sisters. Brothers who partially inhibit the inheritance of their sister are four: a son, a son's son, a full brother, a consanguine brother. These are the وَلِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. For the brother, they get double the share of the sister. Brothers who inherit while their sisters do not. Brothers who inherit while sisters do not are four: paternal uncles, sons of paternal uncles, sons of full brothers, and universal inheritors who freed a slave. Testamentary bequest. It is permissible to bequeath something, whether specific or not, currently existing or not. Testamentary bequests are only permissible when their total is less than or equal to 1/3 of the estate. The Wasiyah section has adillah, so I'm going to not go through the dalil book for today's lecture. We'll just jump into the hashiyah because I've already taken up almost half the lecture just reading all that. And page number. Okay. Again, I know that we did this in the last class and it's just kind of almost a repeat, but as I said in the outset, this is going to be a different module slightly because the nature of the subject and the way it's kind of laid out. Okay, so now we're talking about 1/6. So remember how we said there are 6 fractions of inheritance shares: a half, a quarter, an eighth, 2/3, 1/3, 1/6. So we went through all of those, and it's really in the 1/6 where you start to get into the nuance, because the 1/6, the people that are listed in the 1/6 sometimes are listed in the other fractions, but now they're here in the 1/6 because there's a presence of someone else. So now it's sort of like more practical when you think, okay, when there's a mix of people, because it's never going to be a clean situation. I mean, rarely is it a clean situation. Clean, I mean simple. It's usually there's family dynamics and people that are around. So that's why I thought it would be helpful to go through it again. Okay, so who gets the 1/6? The first thing he says is the mother, if an immediate descendant, a son's descendant, or two more siblings are present. And this comes from the text of the Quran, verse 11 in Surah An-Nisa, وَلِأَبَوَيْهِ لِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا السُّدُسُ مِمَّا تَرَكَ إِنْ كَانَ لَهُ وَلَدٌ. So the mother is going to get, the parents are going to get, the verse says, a sixth from the inheritance if the deceased, meaning their son, had a child. So an immediate descendant, a son's descendant, or two or more siblings. And the verse continues, same verse 11 in Surah An-Nisa, فَإِنْ كَانَ لَهُ إِخْوَةٌ فَلِأُمِّهِ السُّدُسُ. If the deceased has siblings, then his mother gets a sixth. Now, in the first half of the verse, وَلِأَبَوَيْهِ لِكُلِّ وَاحِدٌ مِّنْهُمُ السُّدُسُ مِمَّا تَرَكَ إِنْ كَانَ لَهُ وَلَدٌ. We said that this is وَلَدَ الْإِبْنِ كَالْوَلَدِ إِجْمَاعًا. So having having the son is the same, a grandson is the same as the son by ijma'. Sorry, having the son from the same brother and same father and mother is the same as having a son from the same father by ijma'. Okay. Um, and then sorry, I'm lost in the page. And then the paternal grandmother gets a sixth provided the mother is not present. Just to give you a snapshot of what's to come, like he quotes the Rahabiyya, وَتَسْقُطُ الْجَدَّاتُ مِنْ كُلِّ جِهَةٍ بِالْأُمِّ فَافْهَمْ وَخِسْمَ أَشْبَهَ. So I mean, it's just the same thing we just said, but in rhyming form. And that's why I think it's good that we're going to do the Rahabiyya together, inshallah, because it's always, it's like the standard text. Okay, so the paternal grandmother, so the grandmother of the father, she's going to get a sixth when the mother is not present. And then the son's daughter, provided an immediate daughter is not present. And then number 4 is a consanguine sister, provided the full sister is present. So the sister from the father's side. And then number 5 is a father provided an immediate descendant or son's descendant is present. That's the verse that we just started off this discussion with. لِأَبَوَيْهِ, for both his parents. Let me pick up this discussion in the next clip, inshallah. Okay, so we were just, let me just back up 1 minute here. Number 5, the father gets a 6, provided an immediate descendant or son's descendant is present. And this is the same verse that we said, 11, Surah An-Nisa, وَلِأَبَوَيْهِ لِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَ السُّدُسُ مِمَّا تَرَكَ إِنْ كَانَ لَهُ وَلَدٌ. So, لِأَبَوَيْهِ, both his parents. So in the verse, they're all listed together. But in the book, in the fiqh book that we're reading, Abu Shuja lists them in different sections. That's why I paused in the beginning. But it's okay. I'm never going to argue with the greats. I mean, they wrote it the way they wrote it. Okay, so number 5 is the father. When does the father get a 6? He gets a 6 when his son has a son, when he has a grandson. And number 6 in our list is the paternal grandfather, if the father is absent. And then number 7 is the mother's child, if the child has no siblings. I just wanted to get you that verse here. فرض الواحد من ولد الأم. This is verse 12 of An-Nisa. وله أخ أو أخت فلكل واحد منهما السدس. Okay. Now the omissions. This is kind of where it gets a little bit more complicated. In the sense that what we're going to read is not rocket science, but then you have to add this to an actual kind of scenarios. The mother presence causes the grandmother to be omitted. Okay, so this is a total omission, as I said. What we just read is a total omission. The father's presence causes the grandfather to be omitted. That's a total omission. That makes sense. The mother's child is omitted in the presence of four. So this is a sibling that we said a uterine sibling. Sibling, same mother, different father. That child is omitted when you have four things. When you have a son, meaning a full sibling. A son's son, same thing. A father or the paternal grandfather. So that blocks the mother's child, meaning your sibling from your mother is blocked. Why is it blocked with these four? Because these four are the womb relatives, the closest relatives to the person that has died. And we said that the inheritance shares are always going to be based on what's closer. The full brother is omitted in the presence of one. So my brother is omitted if I have a son or a grandson and my father is present. The father's son is omitted by these three as well, and by the presence of a full brother. One second. This is a consanguine brother. So the father's son is omitted, meaning a consanguine sibling, by the three that we just mentioned, a son, a son's son, the father, and the presence of a full brother. Okay, brothers and sisters. Brothers, now, so the ones that we just read up until now are full omissions. Now we talk about partial omissions. And this is the famous brother makes double the share of his sister. A brother who partially inhibits, and you see partially in the translation is in parentheses because that's what's implied, so that's a very good part of the translation. A brother who partially inhibits the inheritance of his sisters are four. A son, a son's son, a full brother, and a consanguine brother. So if all of these have sisters, they are going to partially inhibit the share of the sister. Now, when do brothers inherit and then sisters do not? There are four. The paternal uncles are present, sons of paternal uncles, sons of full brothers, and the universal inheritor who freed the slave. Let me just look at the Hashia for a second. Now, like the brothers inherit and not the sisters, meaning the paternal uncles will inherit, not the paternal aunts. That's what we're talking about in that last scenario. Okay. Let's begin the discussion of the bequest. So let me just put this down for a second and kind of take a step back to something that we said in the beginning so we can place ourselves. We said that when a person dies, the order of the wealth and the estate that is distributed follows that Arabic acronym Tadum. So the first thing we're going to do with a person's wealth and estate is we are going to do Tajhiz al-Mayyit. We are going to spend from the wealth what is required to wash the body, shroud the body, obviously has to be prayed upon, janazah prayer, and then buried. And there are costs involved in the shroud and the washing, the service, and you have to buy a burial plot, etc. So it's taken from that person's wealth to cover that. Unless somebody of the community covers it or something like that. And then the dal is the dain. Then the next thing is if there's debt. The first thing that has to be taken out is the debt. And then the waw is the wasiyah, the bequest, what we're talking about here. And then the mim is the mirath, and then the inheritance. So, well, why then are we talking about this later, if after the inheritance? So, some of the ulama criticize, well, maybe this should have come first or not. But the reason the inheritance comes first, because that's the big, the kind of, I'm a child of the 1980s, the big kahuna, okay? That's the big thing where all of the fractions are there, and so block so-and-so. It's very intricate. So that's going to always get the lion's share of the discussion. But we must keep in mind that the wasiyah, the bequest, must be taken out from the estate first, and then the inheritance is distributed. And that's why the idea of only 1/3 is very important, because you have to calculate what the estate is. And remember, when we talk about whether you've done it before or you will do it later, there's a section in the book called Courts and Oaths and whatnot, when we talk about court procedures. And one of the functions of the court is there has to be an expert that can value the estate or value property, value wealth accordingly, to be able to divide it, whether in disputes of commercial disputes, or in this case in the issue of inheritance and bequests. So, if I have a closet full of valuables, or let's say the books that you see behind me, these are just standard books, but let's say I had valuable books, and I said, I'm going to give 1/3 of this to the masjid. Well, what is 1/3 exactly? Then you're going to have to value the books. So we're going to have to go to an appraiser, and they're going to have to be valued, etc., 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 etc. So that's why we need to remember the order of things, that we take care of the deceased first, we take care of any debts first, and then we do the bequests, and then we do the mirath. Well, what if somebody has, God forbid, so much debt that there's nothing left? Well, then there's nothing left. Neither can you do the bequest, nor can you do the inheritance. So we have to remember that we follow that order, and everything that we're going to say from here on out necessitates that there is an expert or some type of service that can value the things properly, so that we can make sure the bequest has not gone over 1/3. We'll talk about some of those scenarios that might present themselves. And just think about the silly example I just gave you now about the books. Usually bequests are like that. Oh, I give you, what's in this cabinet. Okay, what if what's in the cabinet is like 90% of the person's estate, because there's like one piece of valuable thing? Then obviously we're going to have to appraise it and deal with it accordingly. Okay, so those are just my introductory things, and in the next clip, let me begin by going through some of the adillah that we have in the hashiyah about bequests, inshallah. All right, when we talk about bequests, al-wasiyah, we also, in the Islamic literature, we also talk about wills, last will and testimony. That's something that's very, very important to remember, that we must have. And it was it's one of those verses that people argue was abrogated. This is 180 of Al-Baqarah. كتب عليكم إذا حضر أحدكم الموت إن ترك خير الوصية للوالدين والأقربين حقا على المتقين. That this was abrogated later by the verses dealing with the fractions of the inheritance. So before the fractions of the inheritance, it was incumbent that there will be a bequest, because that's the only way we can take care of our wealth. And then after that, it became just a sunnah. So the ijma' is, the consensus is that having a last will and testimony / wasiyah bequest is a sunnah. And a sunnah mu'akkada, that is. And the people of ethics and tasawwuf, they always remind us, and even the fuqaha, that you shouldn't go 3 days without having some kind of final will and testimony to just confirm that you want things, end of life things, or past death related issues dealt with according to the Quran and the Sunnah. So one of the challenges in this discussion is that bequests also encompass like the last will and testimony kind of stuff that we're used to in the Western tradition. What we're really going to talk about is I'm going to leave as a gift, testamentary bequest as it is translated. Not so much the last will and testimony, which is something we might want to talk about when we talk about the funeral prayer in the section of prayer of the book or something like that. But linguistically, the two are the same. He says, this is an interesting, Dumayri says, I saw in the handwriting of Ibn Salah, the famous Shafi'i jurist and also hadith scholar, and man mata min ghayri wasi, whoever dies without having their last will and testimony, لا يتكلم في مدة البرزخ, they will not be able to speak during the time, when they're in the barzakh waiting for the final hour. And people, the souls will revolve around them and say, why? And they said, oh, he died without, or he or she died without a bequest. Anyway, the importance is it's an important habit to have. So no matter how old you are, you should have something that confirms you're a Muslim. You want to be buried with Muslims, washed and shrouded with a Muslim. And if you have some kind of estate and property, especially if you live as a Muslim minority, you should dictate and spell out how you want that taken care of. That's all I'm really going to say about the will part of it. And then the rest we're going to talk really about its appropriateness in this section, which is basically a person, whether they are healthy or whether they are on their deathbed, has indicated that they want a certain amount of their estate to go to a certain person. That's what we're here to talk about. That's the wasiyah. And then the main rule you need to keep in mind is that we are only allowed to give up to 1/3 as a bequest. If somebody wants to give more than 1/3, they have to take the permission of all the people that are normally supposed to inherit from them. So like a father or a mother would talk to their parents and their kids and say, I want to give 2/3 to this charitable organization. And if everyone agrees, then that bequest would be valid. However, here what we're talking about is without having to go through those steps, you can give up to 1/3. So he says, rahimahullah, it is permissible to bequeath something, whether specific or not, currently existent or not. So in this, there is some speculation, there is some gharar. And he says, Al-Bayjuri says, we allow the gharar, we allow the speculation in issues of bequest, رِفْقًا بِالنَّاسِ وَتَوْسِعَةٍ لَهُمْ, to have peace and ease with people and to expand on people. So I will give you as a bequest the fruits that will come from the orchard. Well, they haven't come yet. That's gharar. We talked about in business transactions, we can't sell like that. But in the bequest you can. Or I'm going to give you whatever milk the sheep will produce. The sheep haven't produced the milk yet, or the cow hasn't produced the milk yet. And therefore, how much is it? Could be a little or it could be a lot. That's also possible. So something specific or not, currently existing or not. I'm going to give you all the valuables that are in this drawer or cabinet, but I don't know what's in the cabinet or the drawer, so it's unknown. But that counts. And that's why the appraisal situation that I meant in the outset becomes very important, because we have to have a mechanism of making sure that that's not more than 1/3. I'm going to give you all of these gold coins, but I don't know exactly how many the gold coins are, and it turns out that they're gold coins from different places and different regions and of different sizes. So all of those type of things which we don't do when we do a transaction, we allow in the bequest. Non-existing things also is included in that are benefits, al-manfa'a. So you can give somebody as a bequest, I will let you use the car, let you use the tractor, but not own the tractor. So maybe the tractor, or I'm just making it up off the fly, it's passed into the bequest with the shares, and maybe the siblings of the father co-own the tractor, but he gave the neighbor the right to use the tractor, so as a bequest, for example. It is preferred that the bequest not be at 1/3 but slightly less. And this is based on the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim that the Prophet ﷺ, in talking to Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, he visited him in his when he was sick. So the Sa'd told the Prophet ﷺ, Usi bimali kulli, should I give as a bequest all of my wealth? The Prophet ﷺ said, La. No. He said, Bithuluthayhi, 2/3 of it. Qala la. The Prophet ﷺ said, no. Qala binisfihi, half of it. The Prophet ﷺ said, no. Qala bithuluthihi, 1/3. And the Prophet ﷺ said, and this is the famous part of the hadith, athuluth wa thuluthu kathir. 1/3 and 1/3 is a lot. Innaka in tadara warathataka aghniya'a khayrun min an tadharum a'alatan yatakaffafuna an-nas. That you leave your descendants with wealth is much better than you leave them having to beg people. So because the Prophet ﷺ said 1/3, when upon being asked about 1/3, he said 1/3, but 1/3 is a lot. So because of that, the ulama say it's better to go slightly less than 1/3, even though 1/3 is permissible. So if somebody had a very simple estate and actually gave one complete third of that estate as a bequest, we would, in the courts, we would affirm that bequest and we would let it happen because it's 1/3. But here we're talking about from the point of view of what is, ethically the better course of conduct. So whether the person gives the bequest while they're healthy, while they're sick, or on their deathbed, if they're going to use the legal construct of the bequest, then it's a bequest. So that's also important. And because, as you can just sense from what I'm saying, there is sensitivity in the bequest because you're taking away from the inheritance shares. And if you're taking away from the inheritance share, people get upset. And do people get upset? Let me tell you, this happens all the time. And there are all these like super secret deathbed statements. Somebody will come, but my siblings don't know, but my father told me on his deathbed that he left me everything. And they make movies and stuff and drama out of this. And this, unfortunately, this happens in real life. So obviously, it's important that all of these things be above board and written. And in the modern world, we really don't accept my father told me on the deathbed. It really has got to be notarized. We really introduce this kind of level. And this is sort of practical fiqh now. I mean, technically speaking, if somebody said something and everyone was in the room and witnessed it, from a strictly Sharia point of view, we would accept it. But, I mean, let's get real. Right? There's a lot of fishy stuff that happens, especially with AI now and deep fakes and all that kind of stuff. So we really do need to have something to be notarized and confirmed. I'm running out of time, so I'm not really going to be able to get into some of the other things I want to talk about here, but I will pause here and only to say this is a very, very significant part of Islamic law, so nothing to be taken lightly. And inshallah, in tomorrow's class, we'll wrap it up and then wrap up the section in the book. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa maulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah, in today's class, we backtrack just a little bit to retake the section on 1/6. And the reason I did that, as you know, and as I've repeated, and you're probably sick of me repeating, is that the 1/6 is the section in which we have a lot of the nuances of people being partially blocked because of the presence of other people. So I just backed up for a little bit to talk about that. And then we saw that we can lift most of these straight from the Quran. And then we talked about omissions. First we talked about full omissions, that the presence of like a mother blocks the grandmother, the presence of a father blocks the grandfather completely. And then we talked about partial omission, in which this is the famous brother and sister situation, in which the presence of some kind of brothers blocks the presence of some kind of sisters. Double, the brothers in this case taking double of what the sisters take. And then we talked about some situations in which sisters do not inherit at all. That's how we ended. And then that section. And then we moved over into the section of the bequest. So when we talk about bequest, what we're really talking about is something that is supposed to take place in the beginning of the death process, because the bequest comes out of the estate before the inheritance comes out. And some authors are criticized that it should be spoken about before the inheritance section. However, obviously the inheritance is so intricate with all of the fractions and people that block people and things like that, and universal inheritors and this and that, then obviously it's going to be talked about first because it's the bulk really of what we talk about. The wasiyah is a little bit more straightforward because it's almost like a contract of a gift, and therefore we just kind of follow the contract. But just remember that the order is that the wasiyah comes before the inheritance, and we can inherit up to 1/3. You can bequest something. Sorry, we can bequest up to 1/3. It can be something specific or unknown. It can be something inexistent or non-existent. So we're much more loose with the bequest than we are with actual financial transactions, because we want to be easy with people and for the goodness to spread. In this case, the material good to spread to other people. So those are the main topics we talked about. The next lecture, inshallah, my intention is to wrap up the Abi Shuja section. So we'll do that. Alhamdulillah then. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.